All right. So on to what really should be the last piece of the SketchUp model. I mean, there's always more to do, but this is really the last major piece. And I'm gonna try and actually talk about two things today and to get through everything I wanted to from a SketchUp standpoint so that next week we can get into renderings. And really what's left is um, Vegetation and Entourage, and we'll get into more of that. But it's really going to be the exact same process as Vegetation, and that's really the more important piece. Uh, and then, if you guys remember way back when, let me find my SketchUp model. We had gone through and where'd you go away? Painstakingly had set up all these scenes to begin with, and it's all part of our base file now. Now's when you're really going to see why these files are named what they're named and the ease that it'll create in putting together client presentations on the fly. So that's really what we're going to talk about today. So to start off with, jumping into Vegetation, this is definitely a hot topic, if you will. We're always looking for new and better vegetation, and we're constantly trying to get Mitch approved vegetation, and that's a big part of what Rebecca's been working on. So we'll always try and update this, but I do have this file that I've been currently using until we find something better to replace it with. And let's see if I can pull this over. This would be under the M drive, and then library SketchUp, and again inside of our library collections, I have this one here called Good Landscaping, and so that's what where this is being pulled from, so that you have access to all this. And what's really in here is just stuff. It's not an end-all be-all library. It's more of my quick go-to. This stuff will work very well for what I want kind of landscaping. As you can see, we have several different kinds of palms, and even in here there's some better ones, like this series right here. Let me pull this up a little bit. This series, every time I keep saying this series, my phone keeps coming up saying, I think I'm saying, "Hey Siri." So like these, I think are really nice. The nice coconut palms. These ones here are really nice, like sable palms. I think they would be another decent set of coconut palms. Another one here. These I used to use quite a bit until I found these better ones, so I haven't really used these much anymore. And this is a really nice one. This is a pretty good one. Another nice one. And then you can get into some shade trees, and I would definitely caution on these because the size of these trees are going to be easily like 2 to 3 times your whole model. And if you start copying these around, it's really going to slow your model down. But if you do need them, I do have some in here, and I have a ton more, but these are just some good ones that I use. Back here is a trellis built with the wisteria on it. So Rebecca, it's an easy place for you to find it. And what's really interesting about the way Dynascape built this is this is actually in, let me see if I can actually group all this together so I can separate it out. Can I just hide this? Maybe let's do that. They actually built this in groups. So you have, if I can zoom in here, the idea is that these are a bunch of branches with the wisteria on it. This will probably be another similar thing. And another one. I think these are all different. And then here you have another, say, like top growing piece, and then you have this piece of coming out of the ground. So you can really kind of put this together however you need and want to. And if this thing is even bigger than what you're, or you need to be bigger, you just start copying this thing over, and you can really create a nice, nice big kind of foliage on your trellis and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, that's that one there. We have bushes and some wild grass. This wild grass is just a 2D face me kind of element. I've tend to stop using it, even though it works great within SketchUp. Uh, this does not render well in a lot of different programs, especially the ones inside of SketchUp. There's an issue, some sort of conflict with the way it reads the PNG. It should read PNGs well, but this one it doesn't, and a couple others it doesn't. So I've shied away from this, and really whenever I need wild grass, I've actually started using this here, which is just really elongated triangles, and they're painted with a color, so they render very well. You know, or you can use something like this. And the nice thing with this one here is I can even just stretch this up pretty high and get a cool effect, you know, like a nice wild grass, which is what this image back here was really trying to emulate as well. Let it come back up, this one back here. So you're getting that kind of idea. And there's this group of grass here, and you can kind of do the same thing of even pulling it out of the planter, maybe turning that into a group and copying it. In fact, I should probably just do this because I use this one as well. That you can have your wild grasses in here. If you see that, and again, you can stretch this too if you wanted to have a little bit of a higher effect or whatever. So these are your different grasses, and then I like to add color at certain places just to make things pop. You know, you want to be careful with that because you don't want to overwhelm the architecture either. But these are some decent plants to add some color, some ferns and all that kind of stuff. So that's just a quick version of kind of what's going on here. And we can really talk a little bit more about it once we get into throwing these onto the model. Actually, I'll show you one more. So this is another PNG, but this is vines growing on a wall. So this is just an image. If I hide this, you can see that this is just a flat image here. And the way they did it was pretty cool, and even giving these little bit of three-dimensional growth, if you will, on the corner. So when you come in here, it actually looks pretty good. It looks very, very three-dimensional. So if you need to add some vines, that's a quick way of doing it. And there's some bamboo here and different way of doing hedges. This is usually my go-to one here because it's very light in polyline count. But if you need some more 3D ones, there's various other 3D bushes. It's always a balance between 2D and 3D vegetation, between looks and weight of your model. So I'll pull this to the side and we'll get into our model. I'm actually going to hide this real quick, and using my layers, because of the way we built this whole thing here, in fact, let me put this inside of my water inside of here. This whole thing of my grounding, my ground, my driveway, all that kind of stuff, you can see it's all one group here, and that's all inside of a container that's on what's called site earth. So let me pull these to the side a little bit, and so you see if I hide my site earth layer, oops, grab the wrong one, that's scenes. Here's my layers. So if I hide my site earth, you see it right here. So I'm gonna turn it off. It gets rid of it, and now I have the squares, which we've talked about long time ago, and we've used a little bit to this point, but not much. But this is really where it starts getting its value. You can see all these squares are inside of a container, but that's just on layer 0, and that just keeps them all together. So if I double click in here, you'll see that there's additional groups. This set of 3 right here is my site flora, which is really what I want to deal with. But just to kind of go through a couple more, this is my entourage, and going inside of here, you'll see another one. This will be my entourage vehicles. And then I have furniture and people. And this furniture, just to be clear, is more about site furniture, you know, like patio sets or benches or whatever, anything outside of the house. We do have another layer of interiors furniture that would be used for that, for interior stuff. And then a lot of these are really just placeholders so that when I purge my file, I don't lose the layers. And we've talked about that before. So really we're just going to focus on this one right now. You can see again, I'm inside of site flora. So if I double click this, inside of here I have flora trees, site trees, and we'll talk about those differences in a second, and bushes. So really trees and bushes are the two that I want to deal with the most. And the only reason why I really separated trees and bushes out are because trees can be so heavy. So this way, if I'm working and want to still get some landscaping in, you know, like the bushes and that sort of thing, I can turn the trees off. It's just another way of being able to control my model a little more. So we'll start with the trees. So you see I'm going to come in here, I'm going to double click this one. And so I'm inside this container. And now if I turn my site earth back on, you can see I'm still inside that container because everything's grayed out. And but I'm inside of the site trees container. So coming here, grabbing some trees. I'm just going to stick with, say, these trees. Maybe we'll grab this nicer one. And maybe we'll grab a couple of these. We'll just to throw some different ones in. Actually, I'm just going to leave those out. Let's grab those, the ones that I want. So from a tree perspective, that's all I'm going to grab for right now. Just going to keep it simple. You know, again, you can bring in whatever trees you want. So I'm just doing a copy and then a paste. And the nice thing about being able to turn my site earth back on is by touching the grass, it's putting it down where it's supposed to. Versus if I didn't have that on, I was just simply here, this thing is like 10 feet below the ground. And so if I paste that in, you can see that this is way below ground. So that's all that is, if that makes sense. Not too much of a big deal. It's easy enough to move things up. So I'm actually going to come out of this, turn my house back on. So now we can start just playing and having fun, placing trees around. We're not going to spend too much time on this. It's fairly self-explanatory. As just a general rule, I like trying to put a group of, I try to put a minimum of 3 palm trees together. Palm trees always look better when there's at least 3, unless there's a very specific reason to have a single. And I like putting a group on the corners. Put these a little closer. And depending on your project, that's really going to dictate what it wants to be and where they should be and all that kind of stuff. So there's those trees, and so maybe we're going to take this one that's a little bit nicer, and say we'll put a row of them right along here, and that's going to be where we're going to spend our money on trees. So we'll do something like that. So just like that, we have some trees placed around. And then similar, I'm going to hide my house again. I'm going to go back inside this group. Oops. And I'm going to find my bushes. So you see I'm on bushes. And I'm actually going to turn my trees off because I don't want them in my way anymore. And turn earth back on. Earth is there. And it's going to come here and we're going to grab some bushes. So I'm going to grab this guy, and let's just grab a couple of the little bit of the grass and just maybe one of these flowers, just to get the idea of what we're talking about. Get that out of the way and plop that down. Turn my house back on. So this bush in particular is kind of interesting in the way that it works. I'm just going to place it, let's say, here. Let's say this is roughly where our property line is going to be, and I want my bush to run all the way back. Now you can always just scale this, but you can see that the material scales, so it looks funny. But if you go inside this group, let me move these out of the way in the meantime. I'm going to go inside this group, and I'm going to hit W, which will turn on my hidden lines, and Shift H to turn the model off. So let me zoom in real quick. If you see these dotted lines right here, so a W again, you see they go away. Those are just obviously the hidden lines of this PNG material. And so if I want to stretch this, I'm just going to select all of these edge lines. So you see this whole edge piece right here is selected, and turn my model back on, and I'm just going to run this however far I need or want to. So we'll run the whole length of the property. And, you know, I'll grab another one and say the other property line is, say, somewhere back here. And then really that's it. Maybe I'll move this one over just a little bit so we have a little bit more room. And now if I want something that's a little bit more refined even, I'm going to come inside of this one. I'm going to scale this whole thing down by 0.5 because I think this bush comes in either at a 5 or 6 foot height. So I just want to scale this to make it a little bit more usable for around my house. And again, turning hidden lines on, I'm just going to shape this to my house here. And just kind of eyeballing it. There's nothing too specific about this. So there you go. So there's a little bush running along that side, or a hedge rather, I should say. And we'll run one all the way back here. And since it's a pretty good height for the sills of the window, so that'll work out well. And let's see if I can find my flowers. So I have my grasses here. Maybe I'll just do a series of some grass across here. I mean, this really is no different than anything you guys have done. It's just copying and moving things around. And you just start to get a feel for what it is you do or don't want. And you know, obviously Mitch has a pretty good say or feel for like what he likes. And maybe we'll do just a little bit of color around this walkway, or around the patio, I should say. And if you really wanted to get fancy, going inside of the grass layer, so you see if I hide the rest of the model, I'm just editing my grass. And I'm going to, just for a second, turn all of my flora off, so all my vegetation goes away. And then I'm going to go to draw lines freehand. And I know I have some planting kind of going on right around all of this. So from this corner, I'm just going to kind of freehand this design. Didn't quite get to the edge. There we go. And I'm going to add another one, draw lines freehand, and let's go to there. That one didn't make it to the edge either. There we go. I don't know why that one didn't cut. Let's try some more time. Oh, I think it's because yeah, this was it's hard to see it, but if you see these blue lines here, it's because we have a slanted we actually added topography to this little area, so the freehand won't go across all these. So I'm not going to worry about that. Really, all I want to show you was, if I turn my flora back on, underneath this bush is actually a decent material, which is just ground cover, and I can paint this now and add some ground cover underneath all this planting, just to give it a little bit more realism, or just another little touch. And actually, since we're here, just to show you how I would do this, since these are non-coplanar pieces, you can see all these individual pieces. If I highlight it, you can see the blue. What I'm going to do is, I'm just going to turn this into a group just because I want to draw, make a two-dimensional flat plane that I can draw on. And I'm going to explode this. I go draw lines freehand. And just like I was going to do before, now I'm drawing on this two-dimensional plane, which is fine. Even though it's not cutting through the grass yet. But what I can do, and we talked about this last week, this push line, I can now take this and I'm going to push it down vertically, and then just highlight this and say intersect with selection, and then I can get rid of this. And let's see, somewhere along the line it didn't cut. It's always the fun and tricky part of this, but I'm not sure why it didn't cut. Let's try this again. It's always fun trying to figure out exactly why something's not doing what it's supposed to. Intersect with selection. Weird. I'm not going to spend too much time, but really that's the idea. I'd have to figure it out as to why it's not cutting, because it really should. I mean, it has the geometry there to do it. But anyway, that's what I would do, and then you can paint that. Just have to figure out why it's not doing it. But anyway. So that's really vegetation. Now if I click on my scene, it's going to turn all my layers back on. So you see my trees come on. Everything is set up to what I need and want it to be. Just for, since we can do whatever we want on this project, really, I'm just going to move this hedge out a little bit just so we can get a nice view. Say standing here, looking back, try and frame what we're looking at through these trees. We'll do something like that, I don't know. So we'll update that, and there we go. So there's our view one. Then we can get into making views in a second, but so that's vegetation. I mean, there's not a lot to it. Really, it's just going to be having access to good quality vegetation, and that's what we have on this particular one as a starting point, and constantly trying to tweak and update it, and that's really it. I tend to like to use 3D vegetation as much as I can, knowing that I'm going to go into renderings. But if you're not, there's a lot of really good quality two-dimensional vegetation. And I'll actually bring some of those up real quick. Let me see if I can be in the same place for the most part. Again, M, Library SketchUp, and instead of going into Library Collections, you would go into SketchUp Blocks. And inside of here is Dynascape Sketch 3D. We've talked about this a little bit before, and if you haven't really explored this folder, it's just a treasure trove of amazing stuff, and it's all separated out in its own categories like palms, grasses, planters, shrubs, site furnishings, succulents, trees, tropicals, vines, whatever. And Rebecca, this is where the base version is for those. So yeah, there's a blue wisteria, there's purple, pink, white. Let's see what this. There's this one too. So clematis. Anyway, so there's just a ton of stuff in here, and you can see that even here, by going vines, there's a 3D and a 2D. And the 2D is obviously what it sounds like, that it'll just be two-dimensional face meat components, but they're pretty high quality face meat components. You can see as I move around, they follow me, but you can see they're simply just two-dimensional planes. But this would hold true even for trees. And actually, this would be a good place to talk about. Let me go back to my model. Let me go inside of my vegetation. And if you remember, I talked about there was this third piece, which is called site trees versus regular trees. And not often, but once in a while, I get into a project where there is just a ton of surrounding trees. Like we had one project that was just in the middle of a forest and we needed to show it, but I really didn't want to show three-dimensional trees because it would just eat up my resources. So this is a great place because it's not going to be in your face detail-wise to use two-dimensional trees. So here we are. I was gonna, let's see here, just grab something. And even these, really aren't bad. Like this is obviously a Japanese maple. So even if you had to use this, knowing you weren't going into renderings or whatever, and I'll be honest, even this wouldn't be too bad because if you have this here, let's say you're taking a shot like that, and I'm gonna jump into Enscape real quick. So even though this is a 2D face me kind of piece, let's get better shadows on here. There we go, and a little higher. Yeah, we'll do something like that. So even here inside of Enscape, you can see that it does a pretty good job using that that tree. So you really can use these 2D components. You just have to use them, be smart about them, knowing how you're going to use them. But you can see this three-dimensional grass really comes out pretty nice over here. But again, we're going to get into renderings next week, but you can see really what we're building up to, that all the decisions we made, everything we've done along the way were made with a very specific vision of being able to click a button, whether it's Lumion or Enscape, and everything is ready to be rendered. It's precisely built to be able to use for construction drawings, which we'll get into later as well. And it's ready to be rendered. So the whole thing is, even though we're putting a little bit of time throughout this whole process, we are saving a ton of time later on. And especially in Enscape, if I can figure out really good settings for Enscape, I mean, this is getting there. I think this is a pretty good look as well. It's a little bit, it's not quite photoreal, but I have lines in here. Like it has a nice feel to it. It's, I think, a good mesh between real and NPR, the non-photorealistic stuff. Anyway, getting back to the point of you have these two-dimensional trees, though I put it here as an accent tree. But really what I want to see if I can find were these larger trees. I wonder if they're just trees. I think the oak trees and those larger trees are in here. Let's see if we can find anything. There's also going to be smaller trees like crepe myrtles and whatnot. Yeah, here's nothing we would really use here in Florida, but here's a blue spruce. But again, the idea, say we're working on something in Colorado or whatever, you need to show this massive amount of trees in your background. You can just, start copying this thing everywhere. Yeah, that's right. Your Coulter project where you just have a ton of trees. Yeah, honestly, that's not a bad one. I might bring that one up. I'll open it up over here off screen. File open. Oops. So, so this is how I would use my 2D components, unless you have a much larger project that you need 2D components everywhere. But if you have this, say, secondary or tertiary elements that you need to show in your model but aren't really part of your model, That's what I used that site trees for, so that when I'm here, if I'm working and I really just want to work on my model, even though I want vegetation on, I can come in here and just turn site trees off and just deal with what I'm dealing with. Because theoretically, the whole site trees should never change. They are what they are, and they're just there. So uh, that's where I get site trees, and that's kind of how I use that. Um, and I think yep, this one right here, I actually have site buildings, and really, uh, actually, I'm curious. I literally just downloaded something today. It's like a uh, where's my downloads? Uh, it's kind of a pack, like a of just buildings and stuff. Let's go with white buildings. So I'm going to hide this and come into here. Oops. And see if I can find it. Interiors. Might be under Entourage. So my Entourage, I have vehicles, people, furniture. So it's not that. Here we go, site buildings. So I'm going to come inside of here, and let me see if I can drop. I haven't even looked at these yet. So this is a brand new debut of these things. Why is this not coming in? Anyway, I'm going to try and open it up. But the idea is that you can add in these buildings, like if you have neighbors, and do a quick model of your neighbors and that sort of stuff, where again, it's this more site context kind of thing. There we go. It's opening up now. But while that's opening up, I'll jump into my site Entourage. There we go. So again, here I have people open, so I'm gonna jump into that. So I have people, and in that same place of everywhere else I've shown you guys, I have this file here for site people, and I'm trying to get a good collection of 3D people to use. And I also haven't used any of these yet, but these could be pretty interesting to use. These are actually 2D face me components done as a silhouette of people. That you can use, and especially for the more modern stuff, this could really work well. I might actually grab these people sitting down, even though I don't have furniture yet. I'm going to grab those. I tend to like these girls drinking. They're always fun to put in, even back here. Let's just plop these in. So anyway, it's just a big collection of my 3D people. And I'm not going to do cars, but I will open, because it's just going to be the same thing. But again, library collections, I am going to open my site furniture. So I have sites furniture. Why am I not seeing furniture? This is interiors furniture. Site art sculpture. Oh, here it is. I was looking under F, but it's site furniture. There we go. That's a little redundant. I should probably rename that. Let's see if my building opened. Here we go. Yes, this is definitely a little more industrial than what we would typically need or use. Close this out, but if I come into here, jump out of this for a second, and go to my site buildings. I'm just going to plop this guy. So say we're building inside of a downtown factory area. We needed something, you know, whatever it is. So we just throw these guys in here. But since if you notice, I have not put these things on any layers. I'm just simply going inside of um, these placeholder tags, which are already labeled for layers. If you see, if I turn off my site buildings, those go away. And so that's why I use this, because it becomes, I don't even have to think about what layer I want stuff on per se. I just go to where I know they're supposed to go and drop them in. So if I, you know, have a view and we do something like this and we want to be able to see that in the background, great. And then if we want it off, we can control it off. So it's the same concept as my site trees, that I can really control my surrounding area of the view that I want to have. That was really the point of that. And then my furniture should be open. So this is my kind of my site furniture collection, you know, some playground stuff, which we've used every now and then, flag poles. But really, this is where I come to grab stuff, say here and here. And I like this umbrella. I'll just grab these couple of things and try and plop them in here real quick. I'm going to get rid of these. I don't need these in here right now. And I want to go to my site furniture, which is this layer here, and I'm just going to drop these in. Yeah, that would be a great place to start with for sure. So there we go. So it's just a kind of a quick go around of stuff, and then with these chairs here, you know, I can place these people sitting on them. Maybe move these guys over here. So anyway, it's just, you can start setting up the scene however you want. It's just kind of want to show you how you know, easy it is once we have all the, since all the stuff is kind of pre-set up, you just really put them where you need to put them, and then it kind of all works. And then when you're looking here in the background, as you're working, these obviously, all this vegetation and people and that kind of stuff can really start eating up resources. So that's why this working tab really starts becoming helpful. So if I need to work on my house, work on the architecture, do what we're supposed to be doing, I can click on my working tab and all that stuff goes away. And here I am working on the building. And then wherever I am, say we're looking at this and we want to see what this looks like with everything turned on, I just click on my scene tab, even though I'm behind a tree. In fact, let me go to my scene tab, and I'm going to turn, just come down here, and there we go. This is what it looks like as the neighbor peeking over a hedge, I guess. So yeah, so just like that, and that's what the great thing between working and scene tab is, I can really control all those extraneous layers with one click of a button. And that's why I know I'm overly stressing the idea of these layers and these containers and all that kind of stuff, but that's really why I'm doing it, because it makes your life so much easier. It really does. I'll move these trees out of the way. I don't like them there. Maybe I'll revisit this or where everything goes later, but just plopping some stuff in. So yeah, so that's really it on, to do 2D components. We can do that real quick. So if we have, I'm gonna do this. Let me go to, let me find something I can use. What am I looking for? Library collections. So if you download an image, and that's all these are right here. In fact, let's double click this. if you happen to get a good image that has good cropping and you want to use it, no matter what it is, um, all you really need to do is you can actually uh, this is not liking me dragging and dropping things today. Let me see. That is not liking me. Let's try this. Do it the way we're supposed to do it. File, imports, library collections, sketch blocks, Dynascape, trees, 2D, images, and make sure you set this to the file type you need, which I think is PNG. I'm just going to grab any of them, and you can just import it in. And yes, correct. Thank you, Rebecca. That PNGs, you use PNGs over JPEGs or GIFs because you can, anything that is white on the file will be displayed as a clear background. So now once I have it where I want it, I think this is, I'm going to explode this, and then I'm going to make it a component. And all I'm going to do is, while it's a component, I'm going to click always face camera, and then we'll do just call it whatever we want, fir tree 2D, whatever, and then create, and it's going to just add it in. You see, I don't make these too often. Let's see. There's my axes. So if we go make component, why is this not on axes? I thought it was. Let's see. I just want to get it on my green axes first. Let's see here. Now if we go make component, call it fur, always face, set component axes. You're saying put it here. There we go. Yeah. It's like, I just want to look at you, but you keep turning away. So anyway, that's just how you create it. And so you can see it's pretty much that easy. The only thing you just be aware of now, if I were to have this on, have a ground plane, and I turn my shadows on, you can see that the shadow projects the box. You see that? It's one of the downsides, but you can, if you wanted to spend the time, especially since you're making a component that will be used multiple times, you can come in here. And you don't even have to be overly specific with this, but if you come in here and cut out the branches, even if you just do it to this level, and I'll just do this just to on this one side so you can see. So I get rid of that, and if I can hide those edges, so those all go away. Now if I turn my shadows back on, you can see where I clipped out, will now project a shadow. So the more accurate you are in clipping that out will be better, but you definitely want to do that if you're going to rely on shadows. It's just something to be aware of with 2D components. And I don't know if that is causing an issue for you or not, Rebecca, on your project. I haven't used them a ton. Yeah, and there's definitely ways I can fix that. It's just not, like we've talked about before, it's not an easy fix. It's a time-consuming fix because you just basically are rebuilding each one. But yeah, so it's 1:05. If you guys have 10 more minutes, I'd love to show you the last thing I want to talk about, and then we're going to get into renderings next week. But if not, we can jump on it next week. And all it is, it's going to be talking about exporting scenes. That's it. So unless you guys have an issue, I'm gonna go ahead and do that real quick. All right. So if you remember, we talked about. In fact, I actually have these named. I'm always updating my base file, and I'll let you guys know more about it once I actually finalize what my thought processes are. It's really the same concept of this. I'm opening up the base file now to show you. It's the exact same thought process, just labeled slightly different. But we talked about before that my 001s, my 1 through 50, are going to be essentially perspectives, like eye level perspectives. So you would set all of these up wherever you want. I'm just going to throw some in. I'm not going to worry about cropping or whatever right now. Update and I have preset just 3 of them. You know, you can obviously add in as many as you want, and we'll do that as well. So say we have this one here as our number 3, and we wanted a 4th here, just like this. You just go to add, but you see it says scene 35, and trying to grab my scenes tab. Here it is. So I can just come here and just rename this to 004, and that's it. Now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, and you can do that for as many as you need to. My 50 series, and I think the numbers are actually slightly different on my new base model. Here it is. So the numbers are going to be slightly different from what I'm showing you in the model to this is my updated base file. You see, there's the same thing in the first 3. It's 1, 2, 3, but I have a -P, so you know that they're perspective. My 50 series, which are the same number, so that's good, are -A, and so those are going to be my aerials. So I'll do a series of aerials, say 1 from here. We'll update that one. Maybe we want to do one here, like this, whatever it is. Update. And we want to do an aerial, say over the water, looking back, and update. And then I have my 100 series are going to be my interior perspectives, which on my old version, I think the one that you're using right now was my 80 series, because I changed my 2D elevations from the 100 series to the 1000 series just to give room and make a little more sense of the stuff. But you see that the parentheses over this, over around the 80s, simply means that on the scenes tab, that was my layers tab, my scenes tab, it means that it is not included in animation. And where that is going to be key is the next step we're going to do is go to view and export scenes to JPEG. And anything that is not checked will be excluded, and it won't export them out. And I typically have my interior set to not export because we generally don't do them. But if we want it, all we do is simply come here and say include in animation, and those parentheses goes away, and it'll now be included. Preset in my interior perspectives, I've changed the, you can see it got much brighter. If I go my 50 series and then jump to my 80 series, you'll see it gets much brighter because I'm changing how the shadow's lightness and darkness is. And the reason for that is these are supposed to be interior perspective. So if I go interior, there's nothing in here really to look at right now, but lets me stand, say right here, and I want to look back at the front door, say this one eventually will be a cool one. I update. If I were to go back to my normal, this is my normal exterior one, inside of here everything looks a little darker. But if I change this to, I believe it's 60 and 45, and then say use sun for shading, you see how it makes it much brighter inside, so you get a little bit of a better interior rendering. Although using sun for shading, it now is controlled by your time of day. So these will become a factor. So you'll have to adjust where your sun is within your interior renderings to get a better look for what you want. It's just one of the pros and cons. And so let me update this. Yeah, like that. The other thing is on an exterior perspective. If you see down here that my field of view is 35 degrees, if I try to go inside with a 35-degree view, things tend to get a little tighter, especially once there's interior walls and it's hard to see things. But these are preset. Actually, this one was only 35 as well. That's right, this is my older version. My new version is preset to a 60-degree field of view, which, as you can see, gives you a much wider view within the interiors, and you're able to see a lot more. And that's a good field of view to use within your interiors. And then lastly, you can set up your elevations, which will be my 1000 series. You can set up your roof, which will be, my 105. I just do something like this, update. So once you have all those set up, the nice thing is now, if I go to view, export scenes to JPEG, I click no. It's going to run for a minute. But while it's exporting all these out, because of the sequential scene numbering that I created, or that's created within the model, and if you follow that, it names them according to how these are named. And so now it exported out all of them for me. And if I go to desktop, oops, wrong one. Here we go. So I don't know why it always does this scene one. Just delete it. It's not anything. But now you see I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, my 50 series, my one interior, my roof, and my elevations, and they're all in order, which is really nice because now if I select all these, right click, I can go combine supported files in Acrobat, combine, and they're all going to create this book within the sequential order that I want. So that once I export everything out, I'm not trying to change all the pages. They're in the order that I want. So you see there, this is scene 1, this is scene 2, scene 3, scene 4, my aerials, and then my interior, my elevations, and my roof plan. So that's one of the reasons why it's really important to me to be able to do that. It just makes things a lot easier. And the last thing I will show and let you guys go, since it's a little longer, something I've been playing with that I think we should all start doing soon-ish is I have this thing that I'm calling a SketchUp title card. Though this is built to my screen resolution, so it may or may not be different. So you can make one for your own. And most of you guys are pretty proficient in Photoshop to do this well enough. But this is the dimension of, in fact, I'll show you where that dimension comes from. But if I open this up in Photoshop and then go here, go back to this, and if I grab one of those images that we just exported, man, I cannot drag and drop today. See if I can just open this with Photoshop. Yeah. So where my dimensions came from is my exported file. If I go to image, image size, this is the exact same pixels, and that's really what you want to build this off of. I created this so that you can do whatever residence Just call it residence. You say where it is. You give a date. All that good kind of stuff. And then if you export this out, the nice thing about this, it just starts coming across a little bit more professional. And I just named this my 000 just so it's the first one. So now when I do what I had just done and combine these into in Acrobat, I'll just combine a couple. I need to combine them all, but just to show you what it looks like. There we go. The nice thing is now when we email this off to a client, it's not just this generic set of images. The first thing they see will be this right here. You know, it has the job title information, so it's essentially like our title block for these images, and it just comes out really nice in my opinion. Makes it look a little more professional, and then you just jump into the images. So yeah, so that's scene exporting along with vegetation and entourage and all that good kind of stuff. Good question. Where was the Photoshop file saved? It is inside of currently. There might be a better place eventually, but I have it. It's in my 3D model location. But all of these, in fact, I will do it right now in front of you guys so you know where it is. Yeah, no, absolutely. So this is this is going to be on your server, that M Drive SketchUp library, the same place we go to for SketchUp blocks and all that kind of stuff. I'm going to create a new folder, and I'm going to call this what should we call this? Photoshop. Actually, let's call this. I'm gonna call this cover templates, because I have it for a couple of other things, so we can get more into that as later as well. In fact, I'm just going to copy this one for right now. I cannot copy things. I don't know what's going on. So this one will be in here. If you need to make a save out a different one, that has different pixel sizes, just do it and adjust the text and the location and all that kind of stuff. I'm sure you guys all know how to do that. And if you have questions on that, to make it fit yours, just let me know. We can go over that another time. But anyway, that's where it's going to be. And I'm going to add, I've been doing this as well when I send out CAD floor plans. Doing this on top of the block outs, just again to make it look a little nicer. It's just something I've been playing with, and I just trying to make it look a little more professional on our end. That's all. But yeah, that's it for now. Any other questions? If you guys are excited, we're going to get into renderings next week, and I hope your models have been coming along so that you can use your models and create some renderings and start having some fun. Yeah, you do whatever you want to do. The only reason why I kept telling you guys to do a outside project was just to do something for fun and to do it from scratch. But and it's more of doing something away from the pressure of deadlines, so that you're following each of these steps a little bit more precisely, so that you're learning it. And that's why I wanted you to do it from that perspective. But ultimately, it doesn't really matter. If you use something you built a different way, you may or may not get the same results, but that's part of the learning process as well, of learning why things work, why things didn't, and why I do things the way I did, and potentially why we should change how we're doing things in the future as well. And that's going to be part of this whole process. All right. All right. Thanks, guys. All right.